Hello, everybody, and welcome to DC Time. I'm Dean.
I'm Chris.
Glad you joined us. Hope everybody had a good week. Chris and I had a good week, we believe. Did we have a good week?
I think we had a good week, yeah. It's hit or miss, so.
Yeah. The Colts won this week, so it was a good week. And Pittsburgh.
And Pittsburgh won this week.
Rolling, so it's a good week for both our teams. That's good.
Yeah.
Chris and I have been talking about the lovely subject of politics.
Oh,
And so-
lovely subject.
Yeah. And so we, as you know, we're coming up on the election. And that there's a lot of emotions around, obviously, this upcoming election. There's a lot of people get very passionate about
Yeah.
the election.
Yeah.
And so we hear that, in a
And
workplace.
saying passionate is a
families.
nice way of saying it.
Yeah, very.
Some people
very-
get downright ugly about it.
Right. So that happens, and we see, and everybody jokes about it or cries about it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, you're fighting about it, and it's all the time. And a lot of people just want it to go away.
Oh, gosh,
Wait, let's get it done and kind of move on.
and move
it's
on.
kind of so we're all that. Chris and I, we kind of brought it up. We wanted to just because we know it's a topic we hear about every day, and you can't get away from it sometimes. And so we wanted to bring up to try to encourage someone, not to, I don't want to state any things here, what I really believe here or what other people believe, or to try to tone down whatever your passion is, wherever you find yourself on your journey or what God has you believing in or
Right.
fighting for, or if you care about it or if you don't care.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to change any of that or even speak to that, but just want to speak to if there's something that's really upsetting, the person. It doesn't have to be about politics. It doesn't have to be about this election. This could be for any subject.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Anything that you get really passionate about.
Yeah.
Like this, to where you think, well, it needs to go this way. If this doesn't happen this way, then this is really a bad thing, and I'm really, really upset. So we just want to try to encourage you to maybe take another look at that. If your peace is kind of gone, or you're really getting upset by all this, how you view the upcoming election or whatever, or if it doesn't happen the way you want it to happen, whatever that may be, after the election,
Right.
if your team doesn't win,
Yeah, that's right.
like when the Colts didn't win.
When the Colts beat the Steelers.
So
That didn't go the way I wanted it.
right. So we joke about it, but it's just for us, it's a God's sovereignty message. We draw a lot of peace on. We know God's in control, and it's all our days are all planned out for us, and they're all planned out for us in our governments and in our local government or the big U.S. government's coming up here. The election is coming up. All these things are all planned out. Is what Chris and I believe. Now that's a
Yeah.
big belief.
It is a big
I grew up thinking that God was in control. I could say that. But as soon as it come to issues like this, back in my past, something about an election or something that seemed really important for our country or for me personally or whatever, all of a sudden it's like, I wasn't acting as if God was in control. I would lose a lot of peace about it and thought maybe it's up to me to find God's will and act accordingly. So we just want to speak to some of those things, maybe hopefully encourage someone out there that's really lost a lot of peace because you're really, that passion or that fight that you have has led you into these places to where, man, this seems wrong what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so Chris got some verses here that he's going to read, and we're just going to go, we're just talking about that. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and
today,
I brought this topic up to Dean earlier this week, and I said, hey, when we get together, because we were unable to get together on Sunday.
So you can blame Chris for this. Why we're
Yeah,
like this. Why
yeah.
he's
If
saying-
this
he brought
upsets
this up.
anybody, just put it right here. Yeah. And I like what you said. I chose politics because it's the temporal subject of the day.
Yeah, we're
It's
hearing about
right
it all
now.
Right, exactly.
You can't, get away from it. And I'm with you. I'm hearing all the time, I just wish it was over with. so we can get back to what's normal, which is a funny statement because in one hand, we're talking about how it's going to change if this person gets in or if this gets in. But the truth is, we just want to get past it so we can go back to what we call normal.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. In one regard, we think it's going to be a huge change. In another regard, we just want to get back to what we call normal, meaning post-election.
A lot of different
It's all kinds of things.
A lot of different ways to look at it, for sure.
It makes me think of religion. And I used to be amazed in my youth immaturity. I would get amazed at other Christian denominations, how upset they might get, people I'd be around that she's dating a Catholic.
You know what? That's interesting you brought that up.
Yeah.
Because, that's a reflection here. Maybe it's good to, because I did, when I got to know Chris, I saw that in him right away. You weren't bothered a lot of things. You'd find it funny that somebody would be about certain subjects. So I like that. I really like that. Because there was things in my past. See, I was passionate about things.
Yeah.
I'd be more leaning toward, you could find the right one. And had some confidence in that.
Yeah. I like that. Had some confidence. Do you still?
I don't want to admit that, really. I'm just being easy on myself when talking. And that's still today, right? You get passionate about something, you find the right one, you find the right group, you find something, and you're going to be passionate. You want agreement on that. You don't really want outside opinions. Chris talks about that. I love when he talks about that. We really want to find agreement about what are, and being
affirmation
right.
of what we believe.
And maybe you don't want outside opinions, or you don't want to look at it like we talked last week's show. Look at it from a different view. Yeah. But I do appreciate about you, I cut you off, but I like that. I remember seeing that in Chris that, he was more like, it's more respectful of other people's views, to where somebody might have a different upbringing, be in a different denomination, a different religion. He could hear them out about what they thought.
That's very kind of you.
Was you faking it? You was faking it.
No, it wasn't. I was faking it. It was probably I didn't have that much conviction in what I believe, so I was like, well, whatever they believe, I don't care. I don't know what that was, but yeah, I would always be kind of struck when somebody would go, but they're a Catholic, and I'd be like, is that a big change? I just was struck by that. And we've talked about issues like this before, and for us, it always goes back to the sovereignty thing.
Yeah.
It is just part and parcel to so many topics and things that we are dealing with. And I remember a story, and this was before I met Dean. This was a really nice man, Roy, who went to this church with us, with my family, and he was a super nice guy. Everybody loved Roy. And I ran into him at a grocery store the night before an election day. And when I ran into him and I started talking to him, I could tell right away that something was amiss. And the more I talked, the more panic-stricken he seemed. And I was like, well, Roy, what is eating you? And he said, I cannot believe that we are the night before an election and we might have a vice president that's Jewish. And that was the Michael Dukakis and Joe Lieberman ticket, Democrat.
For our younger viewers here, you're going to have to look at the history.
Yeah, you'll have to look up those history. Go way back in the time machine.
Yeah.
I can't even tell you who the Republican opponents were that year. Anyway, Roy was struck, a Christian nation such as the United States, okay, how we could have a vice president, which could potentially become the president, and him be a Jew and not believe Christ is the Messiah. Just struck. And here I was, not having all of the realization Father has granted me about sovereignty and the real peace that I'm getting from the sovereignty of Father. And even then, I was like, well, Roy, do you think God's wringing his hands,
Mm-hmm.
right now going, oh gosh, I hope the United States gets this right. I don't want to have to change my plan. I was saying things that I truly believe now, but even back then, I'm not, if you press me on it, I'm not sure
Right.
how I would have thought about that or whatever. But I just remember that. And him having to agree with me, yes, Father's in control. And he almost kind of pushed that aside. And he was still so struck by this potentiality of this horrible thing. A Jew might be the president of the United States.
And that's what I started out with, I think, that framework of we do get passionate about a particular thing.
Yeah.
And when it goes a different way, yeah, it's not comforting maybe even to hear, well, God's in control.
Yeah.
You're still going to have this, well, I want this to happen. This seems right. And man, that's a
Yeah. And
big subject right there on how to, that's why I want to be careful about how to judge or how to handle it. God's got you on your journey.
yeah.
He's got Roy. He had Roy on his journey
Yes.
right then. He had Chris in that situation. It's all about our learning, I think, figuring all those things out. That's the way I view it. Because it's, like I said, you're going to find yourself, if you talk enough about any particular subject, well, you're going to be on different sides.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, this guy he likes Pittsburgh. And I like the Colts.
Yeah.
So
I just
so
can't
you go,
see why
you go,
he could,
right. So you go long enough, you're going to be on different sides about a particular thing. That should be okay, right? I mean, it's hopefully we could, or I would like to see. I guess I would be comfortable that. Well, sure, that's going to happen, but I'd love to see sides come together and talk and hear things out and do the best you can with that.
Right.
Ultimately, is what I would want to do instead of just we're just going to kill each other because you don't. But the world we live in it's a crazy mess. There's a lot of evil. There's a lot of stuff going on, and sometimes two sides, you're not going to reason things out. You're going to go to war about it.
And when I brought this up to you,
Yeah.
it was our bowling night. We were at the bowling alley, and I said, "Hey, what do you think about talking about?" And my thought process was the story with Roy about persons worrying about the day after the election, November 6th. And I wanted to remind people what we believe about who's large and in charge.
Yeah.
And what Scripture has to say about that. But then Dean, like he so often does, and one of the things I love about him is he doesn't tend to think exactly like I do. And so often he'll have, like he talked about last week, sitting in a different seat, getting a different perspective. And I so appreciate that. I mean, I have begun to, even in my own life, when I'm faced with something, I know that when we were going through the Two Nature book, I was thinking about how often I heard myself saying, why do I continue to fall to these particular areas of a sin or whatever they were? Why? And after, our friendship becoming what it was, then I began saying, well, why not?
Mm-hmm.
What instead of the question being why do I, then I started thinking, well, why not?
Yeah, exactly.
And it switched it up for me a little bit and made me start looking at the thing in a different light. And I appreciate that about Dean. And it's something I've sort of, is there another way to look at this, I guess, as well?
Yeah, and that's last week's show.
Yeah.
What you
Let's
the analogy,
look at this differently. Now, you and I lean into sovereignty and Father's control. And so,
And we're still learning, we both know, as our own journeys within that.
Yeah.
Because I get passionate about things.
Right.
And Chris does too, I'm sure. Whatever we're going to get caught up in. So we're still learning to be like, oh yeah, God's got this. It does bring peace to know that.
Oh, yeah.
Even in the hardest of times. And that's when it really, to me, works. To know that, well, yeah, He's planned all this. And it's for a reason. It's ultimately for the good.
Exactly. It's all going to eventuate for the good.
Yeah.
And so I went out and started looking up scriptures. I was curious about scriptures, and there's a bunch of them out there. I mean, you can find them everywhere. All right, this is Proverbs 21:1, the English Standard Version. The king's heart is a stream of water in the hand of the Lord. He turns it wherever he will. That's Father controlling the heart of a king. Let's go Daniel 2:21. I'm going to do the English Standard Version again. He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. You know, here we are finding out all over again. The Father's got this. He's doing this. You know, and it's regardless of what we think is right or wrong.
I know.
You know, quit thinking driving out here to talk to Dean, it just popped in my head, Proverbs 3:5-6, lean not unto your own understanding. The first part of that is trust the Lord God with all your heart and lean not unto your own understanding. You know, Daniel 4:17 says, the decision is announced by messengers. The holy ones declare the verdict so that the living may know that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone he wishes and sets over them the lowliest of people. So this is what we're getting ourselves worked up over. Let's ask ourselves, what exactly is it that we're getting worked up over? Especially those of us who fall in that, especially believers. And we're trusting Father. I'm trusting Father with all my heart. And trying, Beth and I would go, you're leaning. I'd suggest something. She goes, sounds like you're leaning.
Yeah.
So lean not unto your own understanding.
No, Chris's favorite verse he talks about is the
gosh.
one that God is operating all in accord with the counsel of his will.
Yeah, Ephesians 1:11. I always call that my tattoo verse. If I get a tattoo, this is it.
So yeah, it's the God's sovereignty message.
In him, in whom our lot was cast also, being designated beforehand according to the purpose of the one who is operating all in accord with the counsel of his will.
Yeah, so that's all we want to try to do. Maybe, try to encourage. We hope that you guys have some peace no matter what on that next day, November 6th coming up, that you'll be at peace.
I will have some peace regardless of what the outcome is.
Yeah, we'll get through this. We'll be okay.
Yeah, we'll get back to normal, whatever normal is. Love you all.
All right.
Thanks for the comments, and we'll see you again.
See you next week.
Bye.